Iran sits on the second largest natural gas reserves on the planet, the fourth largest proven oil reserves, rare earth minerals, copper, zinc, uranium. Add it all up, geologists and energy analysts put the total resource wealth somewhere between $27 and $30 trillion. For context, that is larger than the entire GDP of the United States. And yet the average Iranian today earns less than $7,000 a year. The currency has lost 90% of its value in the last decade. Inflation is running above 40%. Shelves in Tehran pharmacies are empty because the country can't import basic medicine. The richest country in the room is acting like the poorest. That is not an accident. That is a system. And understanding who built it and why is one of the most important financial stories of the last 100 years. Most people think the Iran story starts with the 1979 revolution, with ayatollahs and hostages and the image of America burning in the streets of Tehran. But that's the middle of the story, not the beginning. The real beginning is oil. Specifically, who owns it, and who decided that Iran never would. Because here is the uncomfortable truth that almost no mainstream financial channel will say directly. The sanctions that lock Iran out of the global economy did not appear because Iran became dangerous. They appeared because Iran tried to own its own resources. And every time it came close, the world's most powerful financial interests found a way to stop it. This is not a story about good guys and bad guys. This is a story about the oldest force in economics. The people who sit on top of a resource rarely get to keep it. To understand the trap, you have to go back to 1901. A British businessman named William Knox Darcy paid the Persian government £20,000, roughly $2 million in today's money, for the rights to explore and extract oil across 480,000 square miles of Persian territory. That is an area larger than France and Germany combined. The contract gave Darcy 60 years of exclusive rights. Persia would receive 16% of net profits. In 1908, they struck the largest oil deposit ever discovered at that point in history. The Anglo-Persian Oil Company was born, later renamed British Petroleum. You know it today as BP. For the next 4 decades, Britain extracted hundreds of millions of pounds worth of oil from Iranian soil. Iran received almost nothing. When Iranian auditors tried to inspect BP's accounting books to verify the 16% profit share, they were denied access. The books were classified. By 1950, Iran was producing more oil than any country in the Middle East, and the Iranian government was receiving less revenue from that oil than the British government collected in taxes from BP's profits alone. The country sitting on the wealth was subsidizing the country taking it. In 1951, a 69-year-old lawyer named Mohammad Mossadegh was elected Prime Minister of Iran on one single promise: nationalize the oil. The Iranian parliament voted unanimously. The Anglo-Iranian Oil Company was seized. For the first time in half a century, Iran owned its own ground. The British response was immediate. They froze Iranian assets in UK banks. They blockaded Iranian oil exports. They convinced the United States that Mossadegh was secretly a communist, a useful argument in 1951, and that Iran falling out of Western control would hand the Soviet Union a direct route to the Persian Gulf. In August 1953, the CIA and British intelligence ran Operation Ajax. They paid Iranian military officers, organized street protests, and within 4 days overthrew the democratically elected government of Iran. Mossadegh was arrested in his pajamas at 5 in the morning. He spent the rest of his life under house arrest. A 26-year-old Shah was flown back from exile in Rome and placed on the throne. The oil contracts were renegotiated. A consortium of American and British companies split the rights. Iran got 50% of profits this time, an improvement. But the books remained closed, and the control remained foreign. The lesson Iran learned in 1953 was this: the moment you try to own what is underneath your feet, the financial and military power of the Western world will remove your government. That lesson was never forgotten, and in 1979, Iran decided to answer it. Iran remembered 1953 for 26 years. Every time a Persian student opened a history book, every time an oil worker watched a foreign tanker leave port, every time a politician tried to renegotiate terms with Western companies. 1953 was in the room. The lesson was simple: if you try to own what is yours, they will remove your government. So in 1979, Iran didn't just change its government, it burned the entire system down. The Islamic Revolution wasn't only a religious event, it was an economic declaration. The new leadership nationalized everything: oil, banks, major industries. They expelled Western companies completely. They didn't renegotiate the terms, they canceled them. Within months, the United States froze $12 billion in Iranian assets held in American banks. Not seized, frozen, locked in place, unavailable. It was the first move in a financial war that has now lasted 45 years. To understand why Iran cannot access its own wealth today, you need to understand one system: SWIFT. SWIFT is the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. It is the messaging network that connects over 11,000 financial institutions across 200 countries. Every time a bank in Tokyo sends money to a bank in Frankfurt, that instruction travels through SWIFT. It is, essentially, the nervous system of global money. Iran was disconnected from SWIFT in 2012, then partially reconnected in 2016 after the nuclear deal, then disconnected again in 2018 when the United States withdrew from that deal. When you are disconnected from SWIFT, you cannot receive international payments, you cannot pay for imports, you cannot sell oil through the banking system. Your currency becomes unreachable by the outside world. $27 trillion in resource wealth means nothing if you cannot convert any of it into a transaction that the global financial system will process. This is not a military blockade. There are no ships in the harbor. It is something more precise and more total. A financial architecture designed to make Iranian wealth invisible to the global economy. Here is the question. The history books rarely ask directly. If Iran cannot sell its oil, who sells it instead? Saudi Arabia holds the answer every time Iranian oil disappears from global markets, through sanctions in 1979, through the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, through the nuclear sanctions of 2012, and again after 2018. Saudi production increases to fill the gap. Oil prices stabilize. Western markets are satisfied. And the United States, which has a security relationship with Riyadh, built on exactly this arrangement since 1945, maintains its influence over global energy supply. Iran's absence from the market is not an inconvenience for the system. It is a feature of the system. In 2018, when sanctions were reimposed, Iran was producing 3.8 million barrels of oil per day. Within 2 years, that number dropped to under 2 million. The difference, roughly 1.8 million barrels every single day, was absorbed by Saudi Arabia and the UAE. At $80 per barrel, that is $144 million per day flowing to Riyadh instead of Tehran. Every year the sanctions hold, that calculation repeats. The uncomfortable part of this story is that Iran's leadership gave the world legitimate reasons to apply pressure. The nuclear program, the proxy conflicts, the financing of armed groups across the region. These are real. They are not invented justifications. But here is what financial history teaches us about sanctions. They almost never change the behavior of a government. What they reliably do is destroy the purchasing power of ordinary people. The Iranian engineers, the teachers, the families trying to buy medicine, they bear the cost of a geopolitical chess match they have no control over. The government survives. The people compress. And the $27 trillion stays locked, not because Iran lacks the geology, the engineers, or the infrastructure to extract it, but because the rules of the global financial system were written by the same countries that benefit from Iran's exclusion. Changing those rules would require permission from the people who profit from keeping them exactly as they are. In 1901, Britain paid £20,000 for the rights to Persian oil. In 2024, Iran cannot access trillions of dollars sitting beneath its own ground. The number changed. The structure didn't. What this story reveals is not unique to Iran. It is the operating logic of resource geopolitics for the last 150 years. The country that holds the resource rarely holds the power. Power belongs to whoever controls the system through which that resource must travel to become money. Oil has to move through tankers. Tankers need insurance. Insurance is written in London. Payments go through SWIFT. SWIFT operates under Western regulatory frameworks. Each step in that chain is a choke point, and each choke point is a lever. Iran is not poor because it lacks wealth. Iran is poor because every road that connects its wealth to the world economy passes through a toll gate. It does not control. That is not a story about Iran. That is a story about how the world works. And the question worth asking, as new powers build alternative payment systems, as China constructs its own financial infrastructure, as the dollar's share of global reserves slowly declines, is whether those toll gates will hold forever. History suggests they won't. But history also suggests the transition will not be peaceful.